Okay. I'm just going to take a minute for everything to pop back up here. I don't know what the hell's going on. Oh, Jesus. I don't know what the hell just happened. Um, from all things, it should look like I'm alone in here, alone with my thoughts. A very scary place as usual. I mean, I noticed my signal was acting a little funky, but that's all I saw on my hand. Well, I think we're back. Maybe. Now it's got me paranoid. But as I was saying, there's this pattern when it comes to any story that captivates social media, especially with the advent of TikTok, that unfortunately makes it to where people seem to be losing their ability to use discernment. In this day and age, with everything that's going to be coming about, it's both exactly what's wanted, but the one thing that needs to stop, in a matter of speaking. It's wanted because, again, the more you can stir people in a certain direction. Chris Signal played up last week. Yeah, no. Around the time he and I were on last week, there was I know he was getting hit with some weather, but I believe, Chris, if you're still with us, feel free to correct me on that course. I do believe Chris was having issues with weather, which main part of it, but it's also the fact that we were talking about our dear old friend Mike the Naked Bigfoot, which yet another figure we've had on that too much weird shit happened to really ignore. But let's go to the situation about Mike, because this actually ends up proving my point. Just about how far it goes for people to try to play up the fantastical. As some of you know, may have heard from the little birthday video that I put out, and I'm fine. I recorded that when I was half asleep and just barely getting off of work. I'm fine, people, okay? Trust me, the mental health train has been gone out of this head for quite some time. Otherwise, I wouldn't be as funny. Anyway, it was brought to our attention that someone broke onto Mike's family property where he's buried in order to try to ghost hunt his grave, announcing it on YouTube. Apparently, Mike's son found out about it because one of their employees happened to be a subscriber to this very group and caught a live stream where they admitted to it. It's been handled. Charges have been pressed by the police. That's the latest update I had on that. As the UFO topic is becoming a lot more limelight, we have the issue of people blowing things out of proportion, focusing on the wrong aspects. You remember that old photo? I can't remember the exact label for it, but Nick Pope brought it out. It was supposed to be the best ever shot photo of a UFO. I imagine with cameras being available back then. Trying to pull up something right now that happened to remind me of that photo. So those of you on the audio side of this broadcast, you might want to pop over. Gotta take it. Voice command module malfunction. Fuck you work, you bastard. Remember that UFO photo that kind of looked like this? Yes, very odd. I have no clue what happened. I noticed my signal started to act up, then all of a sudden it started to play out like someone hit the shut down button. Anyway, this photo happened to come across on my Facebook, so I made sure to save it. Because a lot of people were convinced that this was a rock floating in the middle of the air. Now, granted, there are legitimate hotspots where magnetic activity in the region actually does cause some of the rocks to fly. So the rocks to levitate by themselves. The people in the chat are already beating me to the punch. Social media tries to say that's a UFO in disguise. Now, granted, they do have some cloaking devices, but others try to peer for the more natural explanations. Realize that is a rock in still floating water. Miami, the whole mall incident. There's a video going around claiming to be showing the ET coming out of the mall. Conveniently, the footage is all grainy and staticky like a malfunctioning camera. Here's the thing. That video happens to be something that I'm familiar with. Several people have tried to send me the video saying it was proof that there were, in fact, aliens that came down in Miami. Now, granted, Miami's just weird enough to where maybe some ETs are looking for a tropical holiday. Who knows? Down in Florida is weird enough to where they can get away with it and blend in fairly well. Though, personally, I would prefer to head toward Las Vegas, but that's because I've never been there. The video in question happens to be taken from a TikTok page. And looks like the original author actually started to address his videos being used. I'm going to bring up that video right now, if it'll fucking let me. Come on. Play nice. Full statement from the original Oh shit. What the fuck? Sorry. On my end right now, it looks like I just started a brand new video. That's why I was pausing there for a sec. What is going on with Streamlabs right now? But that footage I just pulled up, for those of you wondering, shows what looks almost like a crossbreed between the invaders from Independence Day and xenomorphs. Naturally, people are trying to claim that those are the Miami aliens. Those videos were made 3 years ago from a TikTok account that goes by the shortest blockbusters. A content creator who uses their skills in video effects design to recreate nightmares. That's the legitimate story behind that particular user. But because it's so easy to grab the video, to be able to manipulate it, kids these days, they can get onto programs like CapCut, which was released by TikTok as well, spend maybe 5 minutes at most altering the footage to where you can't tell where it came from. You couldn't tell what kind of alien that was. It just looked weird. I've had police try to reproach me saying that footage was out of Miami for people who have never actually been to Miami. It is very unusual to see unfold. Now, granted, it is something to be expected as this topic is becoming a lot more mainstream. People don't understand the truth. Because let's face it, at least here in the States, our education system, not the best. And people don't exactly have much retention for even some of the most basic concepts they learned in school. Yes, there's a lot of shit you learn in schools these days that's been easily disproven, but there's still teachers who think they're badass Nazis and try to teach it anyway because it's their way or the highway. They think they know better. Though, isn't it kind of funny to jump back to the New York tunnel incident that there's reported spikes in hate crimes against Jewish people right as the final playbooks for Nazi takeovers are supposed to be happening? Ain't that a little funny? Dumb down the population, make them target each other. Exactly. Too many people are so easily fooled. Which actually brings me to something that many of you are probably familiar with, and I'm a little behind on her videos, so she goes to. I know she went to address this, but to her extent, that our lovely Elena Denon happened to bring up, and it's actually a question I get a lot as well from people who have gone into my story a bit more in depth. Why is it that if we are able to physically get on the craft, why can't we get like a little souvenir? little something more than just us retelling the events that transpired. How come we're not able to get a selfie with the aliens? Now, like I said, this is a question I happen to get a lot myself. They know I'm about to bring out something. Oh God, I just can't win with this shit tonight, can I? But like Dot says, divide and conquer, old trick. One of the oldest trick in the book in regards to controlling a population. But as I was saying, I know that Elena has recently brought up that she gets this question a lot, and understandably so. From an outsider who doesn't really understand why these things don't work. If we have such close and intimate encounters, I should really be careful with my phrasing there with my backstory, but how is it that we're not able to capture more proof? Well, for those who are actually knowledgeable about electronics, the explanation we can give that the craft themselves fuck up electronics for, to put it in more crude terms, the craft themselves fuck with our electronics, make it to where they malfunction. Say like the jellyfish UFO videos. I know there's a theory, the prevailing theory going around right now. I saw shit, what's his name? He's the gentleman that runs Black Vault. Um, anyway, I know the main prevailing theory right now about those jellyfish UFO videos coming out of Iraq is that for somehow those were balloons. I really need to see the logic a bit more on what's pushing people to that conclusion. Because, to the best of my knowledge, the balloons shouldn't be causing that kind of heat strobe effect that you see in the video. It's a lot harder to fake with infrared. And John, how's it going, man? You're missing out on all the weird shit. Because my signal just kicked out right as I was gonna get ready to play y'all a little something. So just to kind of establish for John and anybody else who sneaks in late, Elena recently brought up the question that she constantly gets, and it's something I actually get too, is if we have such close encounters, physical one-on-one encounters with ETs to where we can reach out and shake their hand, how come we can't get a selfie? How come we can't get a souvenir? If the Excelsior has a shopping mall, how come there's no other souvenir shop we can bring back down to earth? Now, of course, you're going to have the skeptics say, well, it doesn't make sense. Why can't you just bring it down? And the skeptics aren't necessarily going to follow that there's litigation, there's actual bylaws against it. To where, yes, certain circumstances there we can have that interaction, but we have to limit how much evidence goes back. And I was actually going to bring something up just before my situation got rudely interrupted by technical issues. Hey, you're only spicing up the life. But where'd it go? I wanted to play you guys a little something. For those of you who followed me for a while, you may be familiar with the idea that I put forward is that if you believe you're having some sort of interactions like this at night, and you're getting your memory wiped, or something's going on to where it's traumatic, and you're blocking it out. That's actually a very interesting point. I'll work that into the show here in a sec. There, nuts. If you believe you're having some sort of interactions late at night, one thing you can do to kind of test what's going on is if you have some sort of recorder going on late at night. Now, the one I use is an app called Dream Voices. Kind of see it there. It's Android based. This is something you need to play around with your own personal device. My main thing is that everybody's got a cell phone with them. Not everybody's going to have handy equipment on whenever this thing happens, because 90% of the good fucking sightings I have are when I can't get a good camera out in time. One thing you could do is have a recorder going on at your bedside. Because I've caught actual voice, caught what is interference. Excuse me. I've also managed to catch interference with something disrupting the tape itself of static. See if I can find the tape here real quick. Now, if you want to try this out for yourself, naturally, worst case scenario, you're going to find out what type of weird shit you're saying in your sleep. Other times, you may get something like this. Now, you may be wondering, Dakota, how do you know that that's something weird? Well, I didn't exactly have a lot of prep time to upload this particular clip to the show. Not bad, but with these sleep recording apps, they usually record in certain time intervals, about 10 seconds, roughly. And as you can see, there's a point where that particular segment all of a sudden it gets filled with a lot of static. Yes, I have electronics near me, but if they're not that bad at night, they should not be working when I get up the next morning. I don't use a radio or white noise to go to sleep. What this helps establish is that something is in fact going on. If you want to get a little bit more creative, you can experiment with Spirit Box app. It's be very careful with what apps you decide to use, because 99% of them are bullshit. Dots pointed out in the chat a little interesting fact. Mountain gorillas have been around nearly as long as us, but they haven't really been discovered until about 1903. So going back to the scenario of why can't abductees catch a selfie with the aliens? Because again, close enough interaction with our electronics causes interference, unless you have some sort of backing, protective layering on it. Faraday cage, maybe. I don't know. If you want to get a little bit more creative, and you're fairly certain that you may have something going on at night, you may actually decide to do what I do and freak out any potential romantic lovers by putting up cameras in the bedroom. Trust me, there's a lot who get very concerned. But again, that is still reliant on something not messing with it. And at least one of those cameras has been acting like it's on the fritz. That some sensors have actually physically been damaged. And as much as I would love to show clips of me suddenly disappearing or walking through some portal, times because it does times that footage is gone. Video to skip. Code on Earth. Come in, Earth. Oh, they know I have an experiment. You can see me okay. I'm here. See, this is why I started doing pre-recorded videos, because I get so easily distracted. Un momento, we're going to try some Hello, everyone. There are no such thing as aliens. Please continue. Dear God, what is going on with my signal right now? Oh, I can't fucking win, can I? So, anyway, as I was saying, Dots makes a very valid point. There's an incompatibility with our technology, simply put, that makes it to where our systems go on the fritz. You have to take into consideration the parts of the realm or density or dimensions, whatever fucking term you want to use, because I know that's going to cause an argument somewhere. With each higher density or dimension, the energy itself grows. It's magnified. There could very well be a point in where a being is such of high density or dimension that the energy from a nuclear blast strong enough to wipe out a continent would be like a mild summer day to them. So naturally, if you expose technology that is not specifically prepared to handle that energy load, that type of potential interference, it's going to go on the fritz. There's some people in Elena's comments I've noticed who tried to suggest an idea that she'd try to go old school, Polaroids, actual film cameras. Technology so ancient that the younger people in our audience are going, "What the film camera?" I'm only 28 and I know what film is. God. Here's the thing. You don't have to do anything exotic in order to test this. Take film, allow it to go through airport's x-rays. Tell me what happens. The film itself gets destroyed, unusable. It's a nice little idea. Go back to a time when there wasn't really any tech behind what we actually used. But the thing is, the actual part that holds the evidence that you're wanting may not survive. That's why they suggest if you're carrying old school film these days and you're going to the airport, have them hand check your bags. Try to keep it in your carry-on as much as possible. So that way it doesn't get destroyed by airport x-rays. But that's still what's readily accessible in our part of reality. So what are you going to do with fancy alien tech? Now they may be able to dig up some sort of old hand-me-downs that we could be able to use. Maybe. But what if? Now this is a big what if. What if there could be an experiment that would essentially be the UFO equivalent of a David Copperfield magic trick? I should probably rephrase that. Something, I got to thinking about it myself, utilizing some of the information that I've picked up on through my research, things I've physically seen with my own eyes. What if there was a way to utilize the craft itself in an experiment? Where is my fucking... This is actually a point I want to try to end the show on because we are getting close to end time, and Chris should be back from his recovery for his penis enlargement tomorrow. So I don't know what we'll talk about. That's why it says insert witty title. God damn it. Oh, I gotta really start preparing for the shows more. So unprofessional. What if there is a little experiment? Say, as an example, that all reasons of why no souvenirs or photos can be taken, because not a lot of people realize abductees aren't exactly allowed to take their phones. Now they happen to have some. Again, if you want to try to utilize some sort of method to capture what's going on, it doesn't say anything about having your phone nearby and turned on in a way to where it's recording what's happening, which I just realized I do have an Alexa as well, so that could have been useful. But no, Amazon won't let me in. Probably need some developer options. But as I was saying, I got to thinking, what if there was a way to go around all the tech issues, all of the bylaws, and that, for the sake of argument, this experiment was allowed? Keep hearing a woman's voice coming through my earbuds. Really? She sound hot? Now, Stephanie, this one's for you. Does the woman sound like she's has some sort of breathing issues? Just, I'm asking legitimately. Just to kind of rule anything out. As far as I know, everybody else in the house is still asleep. But I don't know if the baby will cooperate. But anyway, as I was saying, what if there's an experiment we could try out? Doesn't affect any of the laws. We don't necessarily rely on old school tech trying to survive the trip upstairs. What if we can use an experiment? And think of it as like something, yes, like she is out of breath or can't catch her breath. Oh, I know who that is. I know who it is. Yeah, that's just the previous owner of the house. She passed away not too long before I moved in. She smoked a lot and carried around an oxygen tank. So she likes to pop in every now and then. It's definitely interesting to compare how spirits show up to the ETs. But anyway, I'm distracted. This experiment that I keep being distracted on. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. I'm joking. This takes into consideration that the craft often act like an extension of the pilots. And that more often than not, different energy signatures of the human body are reflected in the actual craft. And that sometimes there's a different hum. You can physically hear, phones can physically capture, or sometimes you can physically hear it, a change in tone with the actual craft itself. The energy itself is moving in such a way that you can physically hear the change. It's that charged up. This is actually a lot of the basis behind how the tones behind Dr. Stephen Greer's CE5 protocols are. Yes, Dr. Greer has some shady connections. It's a little off on that he says that Earth is the only planet with assholes. But I do believe in one of his documentaries he explains that the reason why he uses that terminology itself is so that the people who go into this who are unexperienced, it's his way of trying to get people to go into utilizing his CE5 protocols with the intention that nothing can physically hurt them. If I'm not mistaken, it's his main documentary he says that. But anyway, Dots, as far as her name, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I do know that she still gets spam mail. And I'm just like, I don't know, I keep telling the post office, like, no longer at this address. She's dead. Anyway, back to the experiment. With these vibrational changes, it can actually be recorded on our devices. You can hear the change in tone. Some people who are able to astral project even have this sort of resonation to them. People often describe the sound as something being very similar to auto shop lights, those long LED bars, the kind of hum they give when they first turn on, but it going like making a sound like that. The experiment I have in mind, actually, Lulu, it can sound like kind of a ringing. If you think you have something, feel free to send me it. When I first heard these tones, there is actually a musical process that came to mind. It's called sonification, where and anybody can get this program. It's like $20, where you can get a program that actually converts pictures into sound by scanning all the light and dark areas. And there's actually some musicians that have utilized this in their songs, to where if you run their songs through a spectrogram, you'll see pictures. There's one guy, he's not really anybody big, but he put a bunch of pictures of his cat into a song he wrote. A popular example of this being used is within the 2016 Doom game and its sequel, where the soundtrack composer Mick Gordon utilized this process to hide like old game screenshots, logos, even some satanic symbols, but it's Doom. It's about running and killing demons in the physical sound. In my own experiments, it is possible to utilize this process to recreate a CE5-esque sound that if a person could physically let play in their head, for lack of a better word, it physically affects their body's EMF readings. It physically affects the environment. And it can be done through visualizing whatever image was used in order to help make that sound, or just to play the tone in their head. They don't have it readily accessible, even though I utilize my connections in order to allow for that sound to be found on just about every major music distribution platform. All you have to do is look up my name, spell it right, goddammit, protection meditation, and you should be able to find it. There's even some YouTube videos out there as well where it's utilized. Powerful stuff. But that's because I actually know what the fuck I'm doing. So, The experiment I have in mind comes with crop circles. What if we could use that logic to create a crop circle in an undisclosed location? What do I mean by that? Say we have subject 1. Gets taken upstairs. The idea is that subject 1 somehow has access to either the drone tech that's been spotted making these crop circles. There's actual video that's been proven to be legitimate where it looks like just a little black speck flying around and you see the crops are physically laying out into these intricate patterns. By every test, those videos seem legit. If they weren't, they're very well done, and I would like to potentially hire the person who made them. My thought process. If somehow person 1 can get access to either this little drone or whatever they utilize in order to make these crop circles, they find a patch of land and they create some sort of pattern, just something random, okay? Utilize that tech in order to create that pattern in a field somewhere. To be validated by a secondary individual. There's no reason why I'm using bathroom stick figures other than just to show distinction and to make sure these actually show up on camera. Now, the idea behind this experiment is that person 2 does not know what kind of pattern they're looking for. Ideally, they would have to have access to a high vantage point or a decent drone camera. Person 1 needs to be able to communicate what sort of image to expect without physically telling person 2. Now I'll get to that in a second, Lawrence. The idea behind this is that either person 1 manages to either seal away or send through the post, whatever happens, the image they have in mind, the image they want to recreate into these crop circles. Either they have a third person on standby who collects that image. Basically, he's the main control. He's the one that goes to compare everything. While person 2 goes out to collect solely the potential crop circle without having any knowledge of what type of pattern to be expecting. You have to be able to eliminate out as many outside biases as possible. That's why I say, for the sake of argument, say this experiment is allowed. This tech is allowed to be used by human hands, or there's a pilot on standby. They're willing to work with us. The third person is the most ideal. They get to see both the image that was initially the intended image that was meant to be planted into these crops, while also comparing it to person 2 who actually tries to find the crop circle. It is ideal that the location is agreed upon. It's something that is slightly out of reach to where person 2 can't go out in the middle of the night with a with a piece of string and a 2x4 and make the patterns themselves, but not so out of reach that they can't get to it. Some way this particular part of it is going to be the most difficult in order to just collect the images before it gets contaminated. Having a third person on standby would help isolate these variables. No direct communication other than this experiment being done between the first two individuals. Naturally, this limits out whether or not the Federation or maybe some independent contractor, who knows, they just don't, that they're willing to cooperate. The reason why I say have something like this in standby, because one, it utilizes the tech. Everybody involved is on board with the experiment, but it also eliminates the factors to try to ignore any potential contamination, any false promises. Because yes, hundreds of crop circles have been falsely made. But in this instance, it's also crucial that we try to identify anomalous aspects to the produced image in this experiment to look out for, to try to rule out outside bias. One is higher than normal radiation readings. Obviously, you're playing around with radiation, it can get very dangerous. It can make you very sick. But a legitimate crop circle will have higher than normal radiation levels. Secondly, going back to a ringing sound that Lulu was asking about, I should say. Sometimes on camera, you can hear the crop circle. That's also another good point, Dots. Thank you. Because I'm kind of scatterbrained right now. When aren't I? But if it's done with a 2x4, yes, depending on the state of the crops, they can just look like they're bent. But the radiation is going to be one of the hardest ones to fake. Unless the farmland is somehow on a natural uranium deposit and that's affecting some of the crop. But again, this is just an idea. Whether or not it'll actually be able to be conducted is another argument entirely. Like I said, this is for the sake of argument that all parties involved agree to it. Because if people were to pull off this type of experiment, that would be intricate proof that even the skeptics would have a hard time writing off. While naturally skeptics can sometimes be assholes about it, they do also make some valid points on occasion. This way, no technological interference, no reliance on the very things you need in order to document everything being destroyed somehow. And it creates enough elaboration to where it's very, very difficult, not necessarily impossible, for human influence. As for the type of pattern person one would need to create, it would need to be something simple that they can easily keep in their mind without having too much distortion, but complex enough to where, again, people with a piece of string and 2x4s can't easily replicate it. Easily being the key word. While people are easily fooled this day and age, And social media, unfortunately, fosters an environment where that sort of behavior is fostered. It allows it to prosper for the sake of views, engagement, subscribers. And people are willing to bend their own morals and ethics in order to achieve those numbers. The absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. There's still much we do not know. And the assumption that science could have easily figured something like this out by now, yeah, it could have. But that's also assuming that science is a know-all answer. It's meant to be a documentation process. And while, yes, witness testimonies can be important, more often than not, they're the very baseline of evidence. One person comes out saying something, they're crazy. More than one person comes out saying something, the same thing, within a reasonable margin of deviation. Naturally, the stories are going to be a little different depending on who's telling it. They have something. But if you're able to produce physical evidence, then it gets to be a little bit more of an intrigue. And we pull off something like this. Hey, got to be able to make. Well, Lawrence, that's an interesting claim, but you have to take into consideration a lot of those crop circles were done without the aid of an eye in the sky. Otherwise, it would be too noisy. And drones weren't exactly available by then. So they had to come up with some sort of system to create those intricate patterns. And mathematics is in a little bit of everything. But still, feel free to discuss whether or not that's something that you think might be worth trying. If it's allowed, if you have your own little ideas on what can be done, let's share it. Let's get a discussion going. And I realize I've been off on time. We're going to blame tech issues for that. I do want to give a quick shout out to K-Town from Mysterious Radio for having me on their show. We recorded it earlier today. Naturally, not enough time to really discuss all the juicy tidbits, but with everything that's going to be coming up soon, there's going to be plenty more story to come out. And quick announcement, for those of you who are interested in our books or becoming a Bald and Bonkers author, I just got started with the process earlier today, but if you're interested in getting your books made into audiobooks, we just landed a distribution partner to help out with that. So some good stuff going to be coming out with that. My name is Dakota France, and I am the CEO of the Bald and Bonkers Network and Specialist of the Strange. Much love. Take care. Let me know your thoughts on this or any guests or topic show ideas that you have for us. Let us know because we're running out, man. Let's see if I can go out on how it's supposed to.